Everybody come in, everybody to the party. We're online, online, we're online. Step into the night where all the stars are bright. We're back again to do this, and we're gonna do it right. Something wild's in the air, I just know it. Now we're moving quicker, keep it on track. And once we hit the scene, there's no turning back. Gonna bring that feeling, gonna feel the heat. Online is in town and we can't be beat. We come alive, under the neon glow. It's the party of a lifetime. The signal's strong, can you feel it in the flow? It's the party of your lifetime. Now that you can see, there ain't no stopping me. The city's on 11, it's 2003. Something big is coming, but it's just the beginning. Just the beginning. Neon lights flicker, DJ spins the track. Boys are in sync and there's no turning back. Now that you're invested, we're turning up the heat. Everybody sing together on the 1, 2, 3. We come alive, under the neon glow. Everybody, it's the party of your lifetime. The signal's strong, can you feel it in the flow? It's the party of your lifetime. Floating higher as the stars align. Here on the edge of 1999. All systems on in this moment like you never know. Join us, embrace us, don't ever erase us. 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 Stop! Online's in the house to bring the party of your lifetime. We come alive, moving under the neon glow. It's the party of your lifetime. The signal's strong, can you feel it in the flow? It's the party of your lifetime. We've come to life, we've come to life on the floor. This feeling's all we came for. The beat is strong, we can feel it in the flow. The party of your lifetime. Party of your lifetime. The party of your lifetime. Everybody come in, everybody to the party.
I'm sorry, we're gonna listen to this one more time, ladies and gentlemen, because this song is a fucking jam.
Online, we're online. Step into the night where all the stars are bright. We're back again to do this, and we're gonna do it right. Something wild's in the air, I just know
Just know
it.
that
Now
yeah, we're gonna keep it on track. And once we hit the scene, there's no coming back.
Gonna bring that feeling, gonna feel
Turn
the
up the
heat.
heat
Online is in town
on
and
that we can't beat. I'm sorry, I love this song. And what's going on, my little Vikingers? I'm Relaxed Gamer here, and welcome to a video, a stream. I haven't done a stream in a month or two. It's mainly because Windows 11 is kind of screwing over a lot of people who are streaming on laptops and PCs that are not powerful enough. Why did they have to do Windows 11? Windows 10 worked just fine. Anyway, we're not here to rant about what worked and why they gotta fuck everything up. We're here to talk about space and Artemis 2 and why this is possibly a good and bad thing. So yes, I'm going to go ahead and get the video pulled up and everything, but I'm also going to take this time right now to advertise that I have a Discord and I have a merch store. Both links are in the description below. Check them out. Get yourself something awesome. I got new designs coming out soon, and I have pictures of me and Queen Sombra coming out soon as well. That's going to be put on posters and shit like that in my merch store, so keep an eye out for that. I'm going to, and also, if you're new, subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, yada yada bullshit, yada yada bullshit YouTuber nonsense. Anyway, you got, let's do this. So we're here, we're going to talk about the Artemis 2, their mission, how it could and could possibly be a bad thing. Now, it is quite the feat that they are doing. Quite the feat. Because what they're doing is they're going to the far side of the moon. Something that hasn't been done since Apollo 13, I believe it is. Where they're going to circle the moon for 6 days. You're gonna be in the moon's orbit for 6 days, my people. In a cramped, confined space. That if anyone is claustrophobic would have a very bad time. That's not the bad part. That's just the ironic part. If any of them is claustrophobic, they're right now they're circling the Earth. They're going to be circling the Earth for 24 hours. After lunch, they will be circling the Earth for 24 hours. And so basically it was like 6:30-ish when Artemis 2 went off yesterday. So it's going to be about 6:30-ish when they leave our orbit to a trajectory to the moon's orbit. There's a whole bunch of math and planning that goes into when it is a good time when to set off a rocket, especially if the only active rocket the only active rocket is in Kennedy Space Center. So, or at least the only one that I'm currently aware of. There could be another one in the U.S. somewhere that I don't know about, and if I'm oblivious to it, let me know in the comments. But yeah, there's a whole bunch that goes into it and everything. So first, we're gonna watch the shuttle go off because that's what we're all here to do, is watch the shuttle take off. Again, I was hanging out with Queen Sombra, my longtime friend. She's my best friend. I was hanging out with Queen Sombra. She lives in Scotland, and this was her first time she told me she's never watched a space shuttle go off before. So this was her first time watching a space shuttle go off yesterday. And when she told me that, I'm like, oh, you're in for a treat, because it's always beautiful. So let's watch this. First, I'm gonna stop fucking yapping, and we're just gonna watch this, okay?
Booster ignition and liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Good roll pitch.
Roger, roll pitch.
Houston, now controlling the flight of integrity on the Artemis II mission around the moon.
That right there also scares me.
Integrity.
Booster ignition and liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
I'm gonna let that one part play again, and then I'm gonna touch on it.
Good roll pitch.
Roger, roll pitch.
Houston, now controlling the flight of integrity on the Artemis II mission around the moon.
So, if I understand that correctly, that the ground is going to be taking control of the shuttle, like the ship.
Integrity on the Artemis II mission around the moon.
We're gonna go back this far.
Houston, now controlling the flight of integrity on the Artemis II mission around.
Yeah, Houston controlling the flight integrity of the Artemis II ship. So, ground control, right, is controlling all of it. If that's what it sounds like to me, right? When words like this are spoken.
Roger, roll pitch.
Houston, now controlling the flight of integrity on the Artemis II mission around the moon.
Yeah. So, Houston, yeah, no, that to me sounds like they're in control of the entire thing. And from launch to space and back down to landing. That to me sounds like they're in control. So here's where I think some things can go wrong. They've already had some software issues in space already. Signal. How? Please explain to me the signal. Like, they have to talk to each other. Who the fuck are you? The signal. They have to be able to talk to each other, right? Each one between the ground control and what the ground control is wanting them to do, is wanting the shuttle to do, and then the shuttle itself, correct? So here's where I'm like, uh-oh, we're going to run into some issues. Yeah. So what happens when the signal is lost? I'm pretty sure they thought of this, okay? Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm pretty sure they thought of this. As a fail-safe program, I'm sure they've thought of, like, okay, we'll, if the signal is lost, then, from ground control to the ship, then, yes, we'll let them take over, you know what I mean? That way, nothing catastrophic and bad happens. So I'm fairly positive they thought about this. You know what I mean? But it still, to me, seems like a bad fucking idea to let ground control take control of the entire ship from the moon and back. Can we make this make sense? How is this a good idea? Now, they're on the world's, like, the strongest space shuttle that has ever been invented. Right? By man. They're on the strongest space shuttle. It's going to carry them to the farthest side of the moon, and then for 6 days and back. You know what I mean? That's an incredible feat. Nobody in the no one in well, I can't really say that because 50 years later we're doing it again. But it was the Apollo 13, I think. Let me look this up. A successful failure, a lunar landing mission was aborted after an oxygen tank explosion 56 hours in astronauts' gym. Yeah, so not a lot of these, and people say that the U.S. The U.S. school system failed my generation, and I'm over here saying that it's the 13 mission, and it was the 13 mission. The Apollo 13 mission was the only shuttle, was the only one that took the moon and went around and circled the moon. What they did was called a lunar push or some shit. Like they were using the moon's gravity to push them back towards Earth. To short circuits and ignite oxygen tank protocol. The crew was forced to power down. Yeah, they powered down the freaking crippled command module. Flight integrity. O2 scrubber. Free return. The crew used. Yeah, so it was slingshot. I'm talking about using the moon's gravity to fucking push them. Well, technically, that's what they did. They used the moon's gravity to slingshot their asses back to Earth. But how they had to do that? How they did that was they had to circle the fucking moon. So, Apollo 13, 50 years ago. Well, now, yeah, Apollo 13, 50 years ago was the only time humanity has ever been further than what their original plan was. So, and it's all because of oxygen failure, and the O2 tank, the second O2 tank, blew up and caused an electrical failure, and having to do everything they did to survive, bruh, I hats off these motherfuckers. Like, big time. I really, really, really honestly do hats off these motherfuckers big time. And they made it back to Earth alive by using the lunar lander, landing craft, which was not meant to be. What the fuck? Anyway, by using the lunar landing craft, which was not meant to be used in the way that it was, would have burnt up, I'm sorry, because it had no heat shielding, would have burnt up, leading back into Earth's gravity, because you have to go through, you got to re-enter the atmosphere. And when you re-enter the atmosphere, your shit is engulfed with fucking flames. Your shit is burning up hotter than Florida. Like, you as a human being going through the Earth's atmosphere, 100% would disintegrate. You would not be surviving that. Okay? Let's think about that. So what they did to make sure that that didn't happen, which I'm pretty sure it did happen, was they got in the capsule that they got in their little capsule that was meant to crash down in the water that they were meant to re-enter with, and crash down in the water. They had no oxygen, they had no food, they had no water, and all these motherfuckers, all four of these motherfuckers, just wanted to get home and get back to their families. What did Nixon think of? What did Nixon think? Nixon thought, this makes me look good. Let me award these people a fucking Medal of Freedom. So these guys almost died in space without quick thinking. These motherfuckers almost died in space, and all you could think of is your publicity, NASA's publicity, and you're going to give them a stupid piece of metal. Why? I'm sorry. Again, I'm ranting. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be ranting. Again, this is where I show that the U.S. school system has not failed my generation, at least. Because my generation wasn't the ones being retards and eating Tide Pods. Okay? TikTok wasn't a thing when I was a kid growing up. But, I mean, come on, man. Come on. So, Jim, Jack, and Fred... I'm sorry, the three astronauts. I kept saying four, didn't I? I'm an idiot. Yeah, no, so Jim, Jack, and Fred got to go home and, be with their families. I think it was Jim had 4 kids, Jack had 1 kid and 1 on the way, and Fred, I don't remember. But they had a lot to lose, and they all made it back. But they're the only ones that were able to circle the moon, the far side of the moon. In 50 years, we're going back. Something about this don't seem right. And on top of that, to have ground control controlling the whole thing.
Pitch.
Houston, now controlling the flight of integrity on the Artemis II mission around the moon.
Now controlling the Artemis II mission for around the moon. This is a bad idea. Let the people in the shuttle control the thing. This is a bad idea. Like, if you lose connection, again, I'm pretty positive they thought of this. But if you lose connection, this is a bad idea. You know what I mean? They're miles away from home. Do they have a lever that, they could pull to abort the mission and send their asses back to Earth? Yes. As a matter of fact, they had the same thing for the Artemis 1, except it wasn't activated, which fucking Odin only knows why it wasn't activated. You know what I mean? But yeah, they have failsafe programs. But don't control something that's floating millions upon millions of miles away in space. Because shit just don't make sense. Okay? So that's one of the things I just wanted to touch on, that because you got your good ideas and your bad ideas. You know what I mean? So they're going to be controlling, so ground control is going to be controlling this entire flight, this entire thing, all the way until they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, until they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere and crash down into the water. That's what they're going to do. So for the foreseeable future, while they're in space, this is going to be a 10-day trip. 1 day around Earth, then a trajectory to the moon, then 6 days around the moon, then a trajectory back to Earth. This is going to be like a 10-day trip. Right. So, where are they now? Well, they're still in the Earth's atmosphere right now. They're not at the moon. They're not circling the moon right now. So some of the things that are going wrong, they already had a software issue. I mean, when you're already having software issues, controlling the shuttle from the ground, instant bad idea already. And now their pooper, which this made me just, it's a bad thing. It's a bad thing. Okay, it's a complete bad thing that their toilet's not working. But I'm immature as fuck. So when I read that they were having an issue with their toilet, I started laughing because, again, I'm immature as fuck. So, hey, what are you going to do about it? Right? So, I mean, it's that right there, enough as it is. They're talking back and forth. I hope they get their toilet fixed, brother. I really do. Because, one, that's just funny. And two, it's deeply concerning that their toilet's broken. I just have one question, because I know liquid floats in space. Does your shit float in space too, buddies? I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm immature. I know I'm immature. You guys don't need to flame me in the comment section. I know I'm immature. I really am. But it's just bad. And to me, that's just a bad idea. But yeah, they're not gonna be landing on the moon this one. There is no lunar landing craft there. They're basically doing this for 10 days just to test out the equipment to see if the next Artemis, mission is even possible. Right? So what is it that they're trying to do? They want to put a, not just visit the moon. They want to put a moon base on the moon. Okay. So they want to put a moon base on the moon. Alright, I could see this. Alright, that sounds kind of dope. You know what I mean? Living on the moon, lunar, you know what I mean? Living out in space. That seems kind of dope. Right? Or am I the only one thinking of the stupid TikTokers that are gonna make it out there and then say, Oh, new challenge, new TikTok challenge. Walk outside and see how long you can last in space without protective gear. Am I the only one thinking of that, or is someone else, or did someone else join me on that? 'Cause I'm going to tell you, people are stupid. People are stupid. I'm going to tell you, I'm stupid. There's dumb ideas that I have that I don't act on it because I know what the outcome will be. People are just plain stupid. I don't know what else to say there, you know? So, living on the moon seems dope and all. You know what I mean? Hell, maybe a moon base, maybe they're thinking a moon base would be closer, would help us get closer to sending a rocket to Mars. And you know what? You absolutely probably are right about that. It could possibly help. It could possibly help, send a rocket to Mars. But then you got to think of, like, once you're on Mars, once you're on that Martian land, what are you going to do there? Did we have 3i Atlas, like, fly by Mars and some anomalous shit happen? Which, yes, it did. 3i Atlas broke off something and sent something to Mars, and I'm pretty sure the whole world is trying to get to Mars so they could find out what it was that broke off of 3i Atlas. You know what I mean? What country is going to be the first country to claim Mars? That's the next biggest space race here. Who's going to claim Mars first? And I'm going to let you know the first man-made object in space is not made by the US. It's actually made by Russia. It's called the Sputnik satellite. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, because today's schooling system is failing today's youth. Sputnik. Sputnik 1 was the first artificial satellite was launched by the Soviet Union on October 4th, 1957. Sputnik was the first man-made anything that ever made it into space. It's the first man-made satellite. It's first. But its launch triggered the space race, initiating major Cold War tension and prompting the U.S. to create NASA. The 2020 film Sputnik is a Russian science fiction horror. Yeah, no, because about a cosmonaut returning with an alien, bruh. Why do you gotta make it a movie and then fucking ruin the history behind it? Come on now. Yeah, no, it was the first. Sputnik was the first man-made. Ask your teachers. Ask your teachers. I'm gonna let you know something. They will know. Ask your teachers. What was the first man-made thing to enter space? Sputnik. Sputnik. They'll know. And if they tell you they don't know, then they need to go back to school themselves. Anyway, I blew far off of what this whole thing was about. Like I said, like I named the title, we're going to talk about space. And then we're going to talk about the Artemis 2 and everything that, and you know, what could go wrong, like the ground control taking over the flight from the whole entire duration of the flight, from liftoff to touchdown in the ocean, which is still a bad idea, by the way. Nobody can change my mind. Nobody can change my mind. But I digress. Not everybody is going to see it that way, which is perfectly fine. You know what I mean? I welcome you guys who have like your own opinions in the matter, and you want to tell me what your opinion is and everything. I welcome that. Please tell me. I'd be so very happy to hear what you have to say. Because I'm not just like, I'm not gonna be like, oh, well, fuck your guys' opinion, fuck this shit, and fuck everything else, and my opinions matter because I'm the content creator, and if you don't believe what I say, then you're just fucked. Like, that's, no, I want to hear your different opinions, because it makes a difference. We're all humans, and we all have our different ideas and our different opinions. So please do tell me if you have a different idea. Please do tell me. I'm looking for what I was watching last night, which is why I changed it to the intermission screen, because I'm looking for what I was watching last night, and I need. I don't. I mean, well. Okay, listen. Let's talk about space and rockets. Yeah, nowadays this kind of stuff doesn't really entertain people. Like, even the Apollo 13, after Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon. Again, shit that, you know, they don't teach in shit that they don't teach in schools today. I'm pretty sure they don't teach in schools today. They taught when I was a kid growing up. But the first person to foot touch on the moon is what was Neil Armstrong. Here we go. I found what I was looking for. This one is from Astrum, by the way. This video we're about to watch is from the YouTube channel Astrum. It's called What They Didn't Tell You About Artemis 2, is what they're calling it. So, shout out to Astrum. I'm going to go ahead and like the video to show my support for the channel. And we're going to go ahead and watch this, and I will pause the video if I have something I want to say. But anyway, let's get right into it.
To get back to the moon is on. Or is it? For more than 50 years, the footprints left by the 12 Apollo mission astronauts have remained undisturbed on the moon's surface, perfectly preserved as a symbolic trophy of Cold War rivalry. Through NASA's Artemis missions, the plan was to get back there by 2024, and this time, not just leave footprints, but to stay. Since then, things have slipped a bit. But Artemis 1, an uncrewed mission to put the SLS rocket and Orion capsule to the test, eventually launched on the 16th of November 2022. Its follow-up, Artemis 2, was scheduled for launch in February this year. But guess what? It's still stuck on the ground. On the launch pad, in fact. No lunar footprints in sight. So what is going on with NASA's Artemis? Will Phase 2 be taking off anytime soon? Or are there larger problems that are finally coming to the surface? I'm Alex McColgan, and you're watching Astrum. Join me today as we propel ourselves into the inner workings of the Artemis program, from the technical glitches currently grounding Artemis 2 to the unexpected announcement that Artemis 3 will no longer land on the moon. We're going to delve into the science and strategy of our return to the lunar frontier. Will we ever get there? Artemis is arguably the most complex engineering.
So, just so we're all aware that Artemis 2, or the Artemis program, is what's supposed to propel humanity into the next frontier. So I just wanted to jump in and say that, because I don't remember if he says that or covers that in this video that we're going to be watching. But the Artemis program is NASA's program to propel humanity into the next space frontier.
Endeavor in human history, aiming to establish a permanent, sustainable presence on another world. Yet as we stand on the threshold of this new era, it seems like the path to get there is becoming increasingly difficult. First announced in 2017, this was to be the flagship NASA program for the next decade, in many ways attempting to revive and perhaps even outdo the feats achieved by Apollo in the 60s. They made it to boots on the moon in just 8 years before, and with all the technical advances we've had since then, surely the second time round should be easy. It would seem not. 9 years after the initial announcements, and we are nowhere near.
When you're like dealing with something as like difficult or like shit like this, you'd think like, oh well, we're so technologically advanced since the 70s, we could do this faster than we did back in the 70s. If you go into that if you go into something like space and aeronautics with something like with that in your head, dude, you're already doomed to fucking fail. Space is unpredictable. I don't care how many fucking space flights we've taken back in the fucking day, or how many space flights fucking NASA has had back in when it first started up until now. Space is unpredictable. That is, like, we talk of like here on Earth, us humans here on Earth who don't get the scariest fucking pleasure of doing this, right? We talk about the unknown here on Earth is the ocean. The most undiscovered, uncharted is here on Earth, and it's called our ocean. Yes, while that is true, yes, but also, fuck you, space. It's space. Space is the only one that is uncharted, unknown. We don't know our ass from our elbow. All we know is this much rocket fuel will get us to the moon, and this much shit, then this much liquid fuel will get us from the moon back to Earth. That's what we know. Like, we're now talking about circling the moon. We're now talking about being in the moon's gravity and circling it in its orbit. We're talking like that's something completely different than point A to point B. This is point A to something that was accidentally done due to emergency situations, something that was accidentally done back in the 70s because of an O2 tank that blew up and we're talking about like, well, we're technologically advanced now, we could just do it. When you talk about space, easy is not the thing that comes to mind. Because again, aeronautics, you gotta factor in the gravity density and the air density from where we are here on Midgard to higher up, higher up as you go along. The air thins out. Okay, now how much thrust do I have to have here? And then you get up higher, and then how much thrust do I have to have here to carry my fat ass up into space, right? So it's all science, bro. Like, there's too much math that goes into just getting off of Earth itself, let alone too much math in knowing how much fuel is needed to get off Earth, and then how much liquid fuel is needed to get to your destination and back. Not just that. If there's one tiny little air leak, you're jeopardizing the entire fucking mission, and you're killing whoever is in that pod. Because one little leak can be catastrophic. It can be catastrophic. And we will get into that after this.
The immediate priority for NASA is Artemis II, the first mission to carry humans back to the vicinity of the moon since 1972. Its aim? Not to land on the surface, but to prove NASA's life support systems, navigation, communications, and safety systems work in deep space. A 10-day mission. The crew, consisting of Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen, were originally scheduled to launch in early 2026. However, the mission has faced a series of technical delays since then, and the launch window has slipped from early February to 6th of March to the 1st of April at the earliest. Why exactly? Well, let's take a look at the timeline. On the 17th of January 2026, the SLS, or Space Launch System rocket, and attached Orion spacecraft were moved to Launch Pad 39B in anticipation of an early February launch. This was a success, but
which 39B is the only launch pad that is active at Kennedy Space Program. It's the other launch pads are not active anymore. Just wanted to toss that in there because he's not gonna say anything like that due to the fact that it does not pertain to what the video is about.
that's sort of the end of things going right. Nearly 2 weeks later came Wet Dress Rehearsal 1, a full fueling test and countdown simulation. Whilst it wasn't a complete flop, teams detected a liquid hydrogen leak whilst fueling. Hydrogen is the smallest molecule in the universe, and at the temperatures required for flight, minus 252 degrees Celsius, it is particularly difficult to contain. So a leak wasn't completely unexpected, but it's not something you can fly with either, so it did require replacing seals and a ground support filter.
So this year makes me happy to know that they canceled the flight due to a leak, because the Columbia, no, not the Columbia, I'm trying to think of which space flight it was. But there was a shuttle back in the shuttle program. The side boosters here, the artillery rockets, had the tiniest leak, fuel leak, and it caught fire, and it blew up, causing the shuttle to blow up, causing the shuttle to blow up as well. So, if you don't know, these things need to be maintained, and when you don't maintain them, things like a seal fracture will happen, causing leaks to happen, which if you push through anyway, like the US did, it could be catastrophic and cost people a crew of 7 their lives back in the shuttle program. So to me, it's nice to see that that NASA has learned their lesson from that and immediately called for no flight, and immediately canceled the flight due to the tiniest leak, because that could have been deadly.
Failure 1. Wet Dress Rehearsal 2, which concluded on the 19th of February, was much more successful. The team loaded 2.6 million litres of liquid hydrogen and oxygen into the rocket stages and completed 2 countdown tests. There were no leaks, and the rocket was signed off as good to go. Until it wasn't. Post-test, during a routine purge and repressurization procedure, engineers discovered that helium wasn't flowing correctly deep within the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, the upper stage of the SLS. Helium is vital for these rockets. It's used to maintain pressure in the fuel tanks and to purge the engine lines, so a leak puts the whole mission at risk. Without it, you'd have no propulsion. The culprit was eventually traced to a seal and check valve, but because it was located in a section of the rocket that is inaccessible while sitting on the launch pad, NASA was forced to roll the entire 98-meter tall stack back to the vehicle assembly building for repairs. These recurring leaks weren't just annoying. In many ways, they were a sign of a bigger problem. More tech isn't necessarily better. Not only is there a lot more to go wrong with Artemis than the initial Apollo missions, but we don't launch them very often either. In November 1967, Apollo 4 was the first flight of the Saturn V rocket. Less than 2 years later, the Apollo 11 crew was delivered to the moon by one. The last time the SLS went up was in 2022 as part of Artemis 1. That's nearly 4 years ago at the time of recording. NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman has noted that launching a rocket as complex as the SLS only once every 3 years leads to skill atrophy among the workforce. In other words, people aren't getting enough practice, which is leading to mistakes. To combat this, NASA has a new plan: increase the frequency of launches to once every 10 months. This is meant to keep the hardware and the teams sharp, but it's still a long way off. Artemis 2 needs to get up in the air and then out of it first.
I just built a budgeting app.
What? How?
Base 44. Look, it pulls our...
Beyond the plumbing and what NASA seems to be politely hinting at as a rusty skill set, there is also a deeper, more sobering reality setting in. The sheer risk of what we are trying to do. It has been over 50 years since a manned spacecraft left Earth's orbit for the moon, and recently NASA officials have been under fire for sidestepping questions regarding likelihood of mission failure, or to put it bluntly, death. In the Apollo era, we were taking steps into the unknown, and the end results were seen as justifying the extremely high risks. Now we know it can be done safely, the tolerance for such potential disaster and the loss of life is far less. And the truth is, flying to the moon for the first time in 54 years is an inherently dangerous gamble. We're using new software, new contractors, and a rocket that has only flown once before. Even though Artemis 1 was considered a near-perfect test flight, it revealed anomalies that could be catastrophic with a crew on board. NASA must balance the pressure to meet a political schedule with the reality that any single Type A mishap could end the program entirely. After 2 aborted launch attempts, the uncrewed Artemis 1 mission blasted off on the 16th of November 2022 from Cape Canaveral in Florida. This was the first time NASA's SLS rocket and the Orion module left the bounds of Earth. The mission lasted for 25 days and 10 hours before Orion splashed back down on Earth, and as I mentioned, it was a great success, proving that we can indeed make it back to the moon with a craft capable of transporting humans. The European Service Module went one step further, generating so much extra power within its solar arrays that it had time to use them as a selfie stick. This image is of Orion looking back at Earth. It was only in the aftermath of the mission that the anomalies appeared. One of the most critical issues was Orion's heat shield, particularly how it behaved hurtling back to Earth at 40,000 kilometers an hour. Post-flight inspections found that the ablative material that covers the shield, called AvCoat, had chipped and eroded away in more than 100 places in ways that were never seen during the Apollo era, despite the same material being used. This shield stands between fragile human astronauts and the extreme temperatures that friction causes upon re-entry, and chunks of it just broke off. NASA's investigation into the damage found that gases generated during the intense heating of re-entry were getting trapped inside the AvCoat material. Usually these gases vent out through the charred layer, but because this specific material lacked enough permeability, internal pressure built up until the shield literally cracked. With enough damage, this could lead to the entire capsule burning up, which is not a risk you can take with people inside.
Exactly.
On the back of this discovery, NASA has made a rather controversial decision. Rather than redesigning the shield, they are instead changing the way astronauts return to Earth. On Artemis 1, Orion used a skip entry maneuver, where the capsule dips into the atmosphere, skips back out like a stone being skimmed on a lake, and then re-enters, the whole process reducing the speed of the capsule. While it also reduces the G-force on the crew, it actually makes the heat shield problem worse by allowing gases to build up during that skip phase. For Artemis 2, NASA will skip the skip, performing a steeper, more direct re-entry that is harder on the astronaut's body, but safer for the shield, and hopefully in the long run, the astronauts themselves. Short-term pain, long-term gain. They'll be alive. It's a fairly large change to the mission, but is in no way the biggest to hit the news lately. The pathway through the Artemis mission has been somewhat set since the word go. Artemis 1, prove our rocket and spacecraft can make it to the moon. Artemis 2, add in the astronauts to test and verify all the other systems needed as they do a lunar flyby. Artemis 3, land on the moon. For 9 years, Artemis 3 was marketed as the grand return, the moment human boots would finally touch the lunar soil again. But as of February 2026, that plan has been scrapped. Artemis 3 will no longer land on the moon.
Well, scrapped for now. So things can change, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna use Artemis 2's what Artemis 2 mission is doing, I'm sure they're gonna use that to like change it around. You know what I mean? So, hey, as of February 27, 2026, we're scrapping our Artemis 3's moon landing. For now, they don't say for now. They're like, we're scrapping it. But there's always that for now type idea. You know what I mean? Because if Artemis 2 proves to be valuable and the mission is a success, which we're all down here on Earth, boys, if this reaches you, boys and girls, if this reaches you, like, we're all hoping you make it back safely. We really are, because this is scary shit y'all are doing, and this is risky shit y'all are doing. So, if I could just leave you with one joke to hopefully make you laugh, I'm hoping you're as immature as I am, because this is what I see: big black cock.
Instead, it has been redefined as a 30-day all-up systems test in low Earth orbit. I'll explain what this is in a minute, but the reason for this change is safety and complexity. An independent safety panel warned that the previous plan carried a compounded level of technical risk. To land on the moon, the Orion capsule will first have to dock with SpaceX's Starship Human Landing System, the vehicle that will transfer them to the surface in a very specific lunar orbit. But Starship is a massive vehicle that requires more than a dozen tanker flights just to refuel before it can leave for the moon. NASA realized that attempting a lunar landing with so many firsts all in one go, the first crew docking, the first cryogenic fuel transfer, and the first of new spacesuits, was perhaps not the best way to do it. Instead, Artemis 3 is now doing what Apollo 9 did in 1969, staying near Earth to test the lunar module before anyone is allowed to take it to the moon. In 2027, Artemis 3 will see Orion rendezvous and dock with either SpaceX's Starship or Blue Origin's Blue Moon lander right here in Earth's backyard. This allows them to test life support, communications, and docking procedures without the life or death stakes of being nearly 390,000 kilometers away. This shakeup in mission planning also involves a radical change to the rocket itself. For years, the plan was to upgrade the Space Launch System to a more powerful version called Block 1B, which features a massive new upper stage called the Exploration Upper Stage, or EUS. But the EUS has been long criticized due to delays and cost overruns. Under the new leadership of Jared Isaacman, NASA has cancelled the EUS entirely, along with the Block 1B and Block 2 upgrades. In a major move to standardize the fleet, NASA has taken a different route, officially selecting United Launch Alliance's Centaur 5 as the new upper stage for the SLS, starting with Artemis 4. The Centaur 5 is a dual-engine stage already in use on ULA's Vulcan rocket, and it represents a near drop-in replacement that allows NASA to abandon the costly development of the EUS. While it holds about twice as much fuel as the existing ICPS, it is compatible with the current Mobile Launcher 1, the ground structure that is used to assemble, process, and launch NASA's SLS rocket and Orion spacecraft, meaning they don't have to wait for the construction of more massive launch infrastructure. It's by sticking to this standardized SLS that they hope to escape the cycle of 3-year gaps between launches and move towards the mission every 10 months that I mentioned before.
If games feel too easy and you want a real challenge, there's an app for that. It's called Wand, and it lets you take full...
No, Wand's
So,
not a challenge.
the
Wand's a
big
cheat
question
code.
I know you're all asking. If Artemis 3 is now a dress rehearsal in Earth orbit, when will we actually land on the moon? Well, I'm afraid it's quite a way off. The new target for Artemis 4 is in early 2028. What I will say though is that the scientific payoff at the lunar South Pole is where the real depth of this mission lies, and it'll be worth the wait. Unlike the Apollo landing sites near the equator, Artemis 4 is set to land at the South Pole of the Moon, a world of eternal shadows and brutal extremes. Because the Moon's axis is nearly vertical, tilted only 1.5 degrees, the Sun stays low on the horizon, casting shadows that haven't moved in billions of years. These are the permanently shadowed regions, or PSRs. Inside these craters, temperatures can be as low as nearly minus 240 degrees Celsius, colder than the surface of Pluto. This is where the gold rush of the 21st century begins, the search for water ice. We now know that these dark craters act as cold traps, preserving ice that likely arrived via comets and asteroids eons ago. And this isn't just a scientific curiosity, it's a strategic resource. If we can harvest water ice from the Moon, we can split it into oxygen for breathing and hydrogen for rocket fuel. The Moon becomes a deep space gas station, the essential first step for any future mission to Mars.
So that's an if. That is a huge if, right? Yes, this plays into part of the dangers of living on an external planet. Yes, we on Earth can have this same danger, but it's a danger that's not really, a thing. The Moon can get pelted with an asteroid anywhere, anytime, any spot, doesn't matter, doesn't need a specific feeling. It could just be pelted. Now think of it this way, right? What if that particular spot that the Moon gets pelted at is where the Moon base is? You see where I'm getting at here? See why it's dangerous to live out in space? Like this is part that's a danger. That is a real danger that you got to think about. Is being pelted? It could be pelted by an asteroid or a comet shower at any given time, any second. It can. Now onto what he said, that the craters on the Moon housing housing ice. That's a possibility. That is a possibility. And you know what? You can turn ice into oxygen. Oxygen can be turned into a gas that you can use to fuel up a rocket to go further. You know what I mean? Yes. So, in theory, if there is ice on the Moon, then yes, ice and water. All right, you got me there. Okay, like you got me. That would be a really good. That would be a good resource to have. But also, you got to think of it now this way. He said it's colder than what? Negative what?
These are the permanently shadowed regions, or PSRs. Inside these craters, temperatures can be as low as nearly minus 240 degrees Celsius, colder than the surface of Pluto.
So, now we're talking about not only would getting there and landing and building a base on the Moon would be a danger. Now we're talking about sending humans down into a crater of untold depths, by the way. Into a crater that is colder than fucking Pluto to find out if there's ice. You'll be pulling a fucking human-sized popsicle out of the crater. So is it really worth it? Because I don't think our spacesuits is enough to keep us warm in like sub-zero temperatures that's colder than Pluto.
This is where the gold rush of the 21st century begins, the search for water ice. We now know that these dark craters act as cold traps, preserving ice that likely arrived via comets and asteroids eons ago. And this isn't just a scientific curiosity, it's a strategic resource. If we can harvest water ice from the moon, we can split it into oxygen for breathing and hydrogen for rocket fuel. The moon becomes a deep space gas station, the essential first step for any future mission to Mars. Artemis 4 will carry a suite of advanced instruments to investigate this frontier. One of the most important is DUSTER, the Dust and Plasma Environment Surveyor. Lunar dust is one of the greatest threats to human exploration. It's not like Earth dust. Instead, it's made of tiny, jagged shards of volcanic glass that are electrostatically charged by the solar wind. It sticks to everything, grinds away at seals, and is toxic if inhaled. DUSTER, mounted on a small autonomous rover called MAP, will study how this dust behaves.
Let's go back to what he just said.
The Dust and Plasma Environment Surveyor. Lunar dust is one of the greatest threats to human exploration. It's not like Earth dust. Instead, it's made of tiny, jagged shards of volcanic glass that are electrostatically charged by the solar wind. It sticks to everything, grinds away at seals, and is toxic if inhaled.
So, it's toxic if inhaled. I'm sorry, who the fuck took off their space helmet on the moon and is like, let me get a big fucking whiff. Yeah, that's gonna kill me soon.
DUSTER, mounted on a small autonomous rover called MAP, will study how this dust behaves when a lander touches down or when astronauts walk through it. Alongside DUSTER will be the South Pole Seismic Station, or SPSS. This seismometer will listen to the heartbeat of the moon, measuring moonquakes and the frequency of meteorite impacts. The astronauts will even use a thumper, a device that creates controlled seismic waves to map the structure of the ground beneath their feet, looking for the telltale signatures of buried ice deposits. One specific area of interest is Shackleton Crater, which is 21 kilometers wide and 4 kilometers deep, a place where the walls are so steep they exceed a 30-degree slope, creating a perfect trap for ancient volatiles. To operate in this environment, the astronauts need more than just a rocket. They need a new skin. The next generation of explorers will wear the Axiom Extravehicular Mobility Unit, or AXIMU. These suits, developed in partnership with Axiom Space and even the fashion house Prada, are a massive leap over the Apollo A7L suits. The old Apollo suits were notoriously stiff. Astronauts often had to bunny hop because they couldn't easily bend their knees or waist. The AXIMU uses a hybrid design of hard-shell parts and advanced fabric joints that provide a range of motion never seen before in a pressurized garment. The suit is essentially a self-contained spacecraft. It features a life support system that can withstand the extreme cold of the PSRs for at least 2 hours. It includes 4G LTE communications developed with Nokia, and a high-tech visor system developed with Oakley. Most importantly, it is built with seals and materials specifically designed to keep the abrasive lunar dust out of the joints and the airlock. Artemis 3 will be the first time these suits are tested in the actual vacuum of space before they are relied upon for the landing in 2028. But as well as all this cool science, there's something else going on in this race to get back to the moon. Geopolitics. Despite increased costs and a desire to prove that they can execute on their promise to go back to the moon, NASA's urgency for another lunar landing has another big driver: what they are calling credible competition from China. Beijing has been methodically checking off milestones, including returning samples from the moon's far side and announcing their own plans for a crewed landing by 2030. US officials are concerned about a space sector capture, the idea that China could establish a presence at the resource-rich South Pole and effectively claim it as their own territory. If that happens, then NASA's plans for future Mars missions and beyond could crumble into moon dust. It's turned Artemis from a scientific mission into a strategic necessity to win the race. Only time can tell if they will come out on top.
So, claiming territory in space, like, there's no law against that, I'm fairly certain. Like, even me and you, even people like us can claim a spot on the moon. Yeah, you guys just seen my illiteracy firsthand, yes. Space territory space territory law is primarily governed by the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, or OST, which establishes that outer space, including the moon and celestial bodies, is free for exploration by all nations and is not subjected to national operation by claim of sovereignty. Use occupation or any other means. As of 2024, 115 countries and parties to this treaty, meaning non-appropriation. No nation can claim ownership of outer space planets or celestial bodies. Right here. So what he said is false. Just because you stick your flag there does not mean you own that part of the celestial body. You know what I mean? Due to the treaty that has been put in place and that has forever been and has not been ruled as outdated, it don't fucking matter. Outer space cannot be claimed. That one spot that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed at is not property of the U.S. It just means we were there. You know what I mean? Our flag we put there just means the U.S. was here. Fucking China can land in that same spot and place their flag down, and all it symbolizes is that they were there. You know what I mean? You cannot... No nation can claim ownership of outer space planets or celestial bodies. outer space is free for all states to explore and use on a basis of equality. So what he just said, that if China gets there first and plants their flag, that's China's resource and we can't touch it. That's a lie. That is an actual lie. So I don't know where he got that from, or that idea or that notion, or whoever told him that, but it is not. They cannot claim it. It's free resource. So this whole bit right here.
Despite increased costs and a desire to prove that they can execute on their promise to
This
go back to
piece
the moon,
right here.
NASA's urgency for another lunar landing has another big driver.
It's
what they
complete
are
lie.
calling credible competition from China. Beijing has been methodically checking off milestones, including returning samples from the moon's far side and announcing their own plans for a crewed landing by 2030. US officials are concerned about a space sector capture, the idea that China could establish a presence at the resource-rich South Pole.
Space Race NASA chief warns that China could claim territory on the moon. That right there, we've already shown they cannot do that, because claiming a territory means you own that piece of the moon, and we already seen here, no nation can claim ownership of outer space planets or of outer space planet or celestial bodies. That every planet and celestial body is of equality, free for all states to explore, and is on a use of basis of equality. So not only if China gets there first, they cannot say because we got there after them and we took ice and stuff from there, they cannot do anything about it, because it is governed by free use for all states and explore and use on basis of equality. This is not something that is they can't claim it. There is no claiming a piece of the moon.
And effectively claim it as their own territory. If that happens, then NASA's plans for future Mars missions and beyond could crumble into moon dust. It's turned Artemis from a scientific mission into a strategic necessity to win the race. Only time can tell if they will come out on top. The journey to the moon has always been a story of trial and error. In 1969, we reached the lunar surface because we were willing to take enormous risks in a race against time and the Russians. Today, the stakes are different. We aren't racing to plant a flag, we're racing to build an economy. The transition to a standardized SLS with the Centaur 5 stage, the low Earth orbit test of Artemis 3, and the deep science of Artemis 4 represent a move towards a sustainable, repeatable presence. Simply putting a person back on the moon won't be enough to win the geopolitical war. The moon's south pole remains the most significant scientific target in our solar system, a place where the history of our planet is frozen in shadow, where the fuel for our future is waiting to be found. The road to 2028 may be longer and more complex than we anticipated, but the foundation we are building now is meant to last not for a decade, but for a century. On the 12th of March, NASA gave the official go for crew to prepare for a 1st of April launch on Artemis 2. With the astronauts in quarantine and the rocket back on the launch pad, I for one really hope it takes off. After all, regardless of the technical failures, budget overruns and changing geopolitical landscape that have forced a radical rethink of how we get back to the moon, it would be great to watch another moon landing, especially for those of us who weren't around to see it the first time.
So I want to see real quick if anyone was smart enough to post it in his chat. And so far I don't see anybody who was smart enough to actually post. So I'm gonna do it. That, and then I'm gonna do that. Now let's go back to here. Am I that upset that that nobody posted that? No, not really. Kind of expected nobody to post it, to be honest with you. Because in today's world, the school system is failing today's world. But back when I was growing up, things that wasn't being taught now was being taught when I was going through elementary school, middle school, and high school. So, I mean, there's that. And I graduated high school in 2012. I had teachers that taught me shit. Shit that's not being taught now. So, that's why I knew that you cannot claim about that treaty where space is a non is a non-claimable and is not claimable, because not, like I said, not a lot of people is going to know that. Not a lot of people is going to know that. You know what I mean? And that's perfectly fine. If you guys don't know that, then that's perfectly fine. I'm okay with that. Then at least you know you learned something, and when you learn something, your knowledge about the thing grows. So, you know, it's good to learn things. So we're gonna get into a little bit of like the darker side of space exploration and the things that could happen. I want to start off with the Challenger space shuttle disaster explained minute by minute. This is why I said I'm glad that the US learned from their mistakes, because everything that happened with this shuttle was bad. Just straight bad. So I want to do this I want to watch this. First off, I don't care. This was like I don't care if this was like a long ass fucking time ago. Like it don't matter to me. I want to put out my deepest condolences to the families who lost their loved ones in this Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. I want to give my deepest condolences, because it's not something to laugh at, or this is educational purposes only. I don't understand why I have to put this out there, but this is for educational purposes only, on the technical malfunctions and things that can go wrong. And if you choose to ignore them, or choose to ignore the warnings, then things can go awry, and you're putting a lot of people's lives at risk. So YouTube, educational purpose only, right here. Boom, 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 boom. Educational. So again, I'm sorry, ladies, and I'm sorry to the families. But this is the infograph show. The Challenger space shuttle disaster explained minute by minute. So I just want to put that out. This has to be played. At least one out of the two shuttle disasters have to be played. But this is the one where NASA has learned their lesson. I believe this is the one that NASA learned their lesson on. So let's get into it.
73 seconds after launch, the Challenger space shuttle rises higher and higher towards space. Its iconic white solid rocket boosters roar as flames spew out of the back of them. The flight crew has continued to communicate with launch control since liftoff. No one knows that anything is wrong, and that in the next second, tragedy will strike. A fire rages along the side of the right booster as fuel escapes due to a compromised seal. In moments, the supporting struts connecting the rockets to the orange external fuel tank will experience a catastrophic failure. The booster will slam into the tank, rocket fuel will ignite, and there will be a massive explosion. April 4th, 1983. T-minus 2 years and 9 months until the Challenger disaster. All systems go, prepare for liftoff. Mission Control says over the intercom to the Challenger flight crew, this will be the space shuttle's maiden voyage. The boosters ignite, and the 184-foot, 4.5 million pound space shuttle thrusts towards space. The first mission was a success, and the Challenger space shuttle will end up flying 6 more missions that year. The shuttle is reliable, but every time it launches into space and lands after re-entry, a toll is taken on the spacecraft. Constant repairs need to be made while old components are swapped out for new ones. Engineers who work on the shuttle day in and day out warn NASA that the stresses that constant missions to space place on the space shuttle may lead to tragedy in the future.
And that is true, because the vacuum of space is applying so much pressure on these shuttles, on these vehicles. It's applying so much pressure that any type of seal, any type of O-ring, any type of what the fuck ever, yes, has to be under constant maintenance and repairs. Yes. But also, this here is like the first the first out of like many warnings that was given to NASA, and NASA did not listen.
July 19th, 1985, T-minus 6 months until the Challenger disaster. We're pleased to inform you that you've been selected to become the first teacher to go to space. Krista McAuliffe can't believe the words she's just read. Several months ago, she submitted her application to the NASA Teacher in Space project along with 11,000 other educators. Never in her wildest dreams did she believe she would be chosen. However, this letter confirms that she will in fact be going to space and that she will be lucky enough to share this incredible experience with students across the country when she gets back. McAuliffe teaches at Concord High School in New Hampshire. When she tells her colleagues the news, they are elated. Her family, friends, and students are all extremely happy for her. As a part of the Teacher in Space project, she will conduct 2 lessons from orbit and embark on a lecture series across the United States to share her experience with students. This will be done to highlight the importance of teachers in the country and hopefully inspire students to pursue careers in technology and science. Over the next several months, McAuliffe joins her fellow crewmates at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, where they train and prepare for their coming mission. Francis R. Scobie will be the commander of the spacecraft. In April of 1984, he piloted Challenger mission STS-41C, which deployed a new satellite and repaired a damaged satellite before returning to Earth. Since then, he's been an instructor pilot for the Shuttle 747 carrier aircraft. This will be his first space command, and he couldn't be more excited. Piloting the mission will be Michael J. Smith. He's flown 28 different types of civilian and military aircraft and logged 4,867 hours of flight time. Judith A. Resnick will be one of the mission specialists on board. Resnick had become part of Astronaut Group 8, which was the first to include women on the team. She's developed a variety of software and procedures that are utilized throughout NASA. She's been to space before aboard the STS-41D mission in August 1984. This was the very first mission of the Space Shuttle Discovery. 2 other mission specialists are a part of the Challenger crew as well. Ronald E. McNair flew aboard Challenger in February 1984 during mission STS-41B. It was on this mission that he became the second African American to fly into space. Ellison S. Onizuka was the first Asian American and the first person of Japanese origin to reach space during his time aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery during STS-51C. The final crew member aboard the upcoming Challenger launch, designated STS-51L, is Gregory B. Jarvis. He's the payload specialist. This will be his first time in space, although he's been slated to fly aboard a different shuttle in April of 1985. But his spot was given to U.S. Senator Jake Garn instead. Then a similar situation happened again in early January 1986 when U.S. Representative Bill Nelson took his place aboard another space shuttle. Now Jarvis finally has the opportunity to reach space where he can put his astronaut training to good use. But like every other member of the crew, he will never actually make it beyond Earth's atmosphere. January 22, 1986, T-minus 6 days until the Challenger disaster. The Challenger crew eagerly awaits confirmation of whether their mission is a go or not. A high-ranking NASA officer enters the room with a frown on his face. "Sorry about this, crew, but we're gonna have to delay your mission until 61C gets back. Their assignment ran into delays, and their shuttle isn't due to land until tomorrow." The Challenger crew looks at one another in dismay. They're eager to get going. Every mission to space is special, and even for veteran astronauts, it's what they dream about doing every night. It's as if the stars are beckoning them to reach for the unknown. January 27, 1986, T-minus 1 day until the Challenger disaster. Challenger mission STS-51L is planned to have an early morning liftoff the following day. The astronauts toss and turn in their beds in anticipation. A chill sweeps across Florida, as if foreshadowing the ominous events that'll happen in the coming hours. The launch pad becomes covered in thick ice. The metals that make up the space shuttle and boosters contract slightly with the cold. As engineers...
And this is, again, the O-rings and the seals and the sealing will in extreme colds such as this can harden, freeze up, and crack.
Check the spacecraft over and over again to make sure it's in an acceptable condition for launch. A disturbing realization surfaces.
Come on!
"Sir, I want to reiterate that I'm concerned about the reliability of the seals in the rockets," an engineer explains to his supervisor. For over 2 years, the engineers and technicians that work in the shuttle program have warned that the space shuttles are being overused. The crafts are sturdy and well made, but every machine has its breaking point, and it feels as if after dozens of flights, it's only a matter of time before something tragic happens. The NASA official acknowledges the engineers' concern, but does nothing more. The launch will commence as scheduled, regardless of the warnings voiced by the men and women working directly with the spacecraft. January 28, 1986,
And this is the
9 a.m.
stupidity.
T-minus 2 hours and 38 minutes until the
They-
Challenger disaster.
they
The
learned
sun is
their
rising
lesson.
higher and higher over
They
the
re- I
Atlantic
hope they
Ocean.
really
A
did.
crowd gathers around Cape Canaveral to watch the launch at Kennedy Space Center, scheduled for later that morning. There are members of the press, local residents, and people who have traveled from around the world to watch the launch. Many are there to witness the historic event of the first teacher to go to space. Excitement and anticipation fill the air. This will be the 25th Space Shuttle launch and the 10th Challenger mission. All other flights have been successful, so there's no reason to suspect today should be any different. The astronauts don their suits and proceed to their launch vehicle. They are greeted by cheers as they step off their transport and proceed toward the elevator that will carry them to the cockpit of the Challenger. Mission Control in Houston prepares to track and monitor the Space Shuttle's progress. Telemetry coming in from hundreds of sensors is recorded and double-checked to make sure that Challenger is ready. The astronauts strap in, and the shuttle door is sealed behind them. The cockpit is quiet except for the sounds of switches being engaged while Scobie and Smith check the systems on board. There's a sense of anxiousness, excitement, and pride as the 7-person crew prepares for launch. McAuliffe looks out the window directly ahead of her at the blue sky. Just beyond the atmosphere lies the edge of space. A bird flies past. McAuliffe smiles. Soon she'll be doing something that only a handful of people in all of history have done. She checks her safety harness and leans back in her seat, releasing a long sigh. Besides the crew, the shuttle also carries a tracking and data relay satellite designated TDRS-B. Also in the cargo bay is the Spartan Halley aircraft, which is designed to be released from Challenger to study Halley's comet for 2 days while the celestial object approaches the sun. The small satellite will then be picked up by the Challenger crew and brought back to Earth so scientists can analyze the data it's collected. Tragically, no one and nothing aboard Challenger will survive to perform this series of tests. January 28, 1986, 11:38 a.m. T-minus 10 seconds until launch. Due to weather conditions, the launch has been delayed yet again. However, the atmosphere is beginning to cooperate. The sky clears up and the wind calms. Commander Scobie and Pilot Smith check their sensors and instruments one last time as they prepare for the rockets to fire. Mission Control reaches the end of its countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff. Moments before the engines ignite and the space shuttle rises, the solid rocket ignition command is sent. The boosters roar to life. The space shuttle and the Earth around the launch pad begin to shake. The sound travels across the water and reaches the bystanders watching the space shuttle launch from miles away. Astronaut Judy Resnick is heard over the intercom. "All right," she yells. Challenger space shuttle achieves liftoff. After the rockets ignite, 8 25-inch long, 7-inch wide exploding bolts fire. The Challenger space shuttle is free to rise into the sky. The deafening boom of the engines, massive amounts of smoke, and intense heat roll across the launch pad. A quarter of a second after launch, sensors record the first vertical motion of Challenger as it begins its ascent. Unknown to anyone on board or at mission control, an abnormal black smoke is seeping out of the right solid rocket booster near the location of one of the O-ring joints. This is the first sign that something is about to go terribly wrong. 1 second after liftoff. "Here we go," Pilot Michael Smith says over the intercom. As the space shuttle proceeds toward the heavens, the black smoke coming from the right rocket seems to be slowing down. 3 seconds after liftoff, Launch Commander Hugh Harris has just finished the countdown and pauses for a moment to watch. He announces on NASA Select Television, liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower. The abnormal black smoke coming from the bottom of the solid rocket booster appears to have disappeared completely. 5 seconds after liftoff. All systems go. There are no anomalies detected by anyone at this point in the launch. The 3 liquid-fueled main engines on the back of the space shuttle are throttled up from 90% to 104% thrust. Everything is going according to plan. At Mission Control, Data Processing Systems Engineer A.F. Elgate confirms liftoff. There's a cheer in the room, then everyone immediately goes back to monitoring their stations. Suddenly, there's a data blackout from the space shuttle. No one panics. This is to be expected as the flames and structures around the launch complex interfere with the radio signals being sent to the antenna complex. But there is one piece of data that is slightly unnerving. I'm reading the internal pressure on the right side booster to be 11.8 pounds per square inch higher than normal, one of the technicians in Mission Control says. The rocket is still within acceptable parameters, but this initial data point will be used later on to identify when the Challenger space shuttle began to run into trouble. 8 seconds after liftoff. Once Challenger is in the open air, Pilot Smith begins a roll maneuver that puts the crew in a heads-down position so the top of the space shuttle is pointing toward the Earth and the bright orange external fuel tank is toward the sky. Houston, Challenger, roll program, Commander Scobie says over the intercom. Roger, roll Challenger. Astronaut Dick Covey says from Mission Control. Good roll, flight. Flight Dynamics Officer Brian Perry confirms from the control room. 19 seconds after liftoff, the Challenger space shuttle begins to shake. There's a sudden, violent thrust to the side. The crew grits their teeth as Michael Smith pulls on the flight stick slightly. With the help of the nav system, the space shuttle realigns itself, and Challenger is back on course. Looks like we got a lot of wind here today, says Smith over the intercom. Commander Scobie confirms the assessment. They begin throttling down the 3 main engines of the space shuttle to 94% thrust as planned at this point in the flight. 21 seconds after liftoff. Challenger's roll maneuver is completed and all systems confirm it is on the proper trajectory to reach orbit. Commander Scobie looks out the cockpit window, hoping to get a glimpse of the land below. It's a little hard to see out my window here, he says. The engines continue to throttle down. 28 seconds after liftoff. There's 10,000 feet and Mach 0.5, Smith says over the intercom. Challenger is now traveling at half the speed of sound and is 10,000 feet above the surface of the planet. It's at this point that the space shuttle begins reaching the region of maximum aerodynamic pressure. Mission Control confirms that engines are throttling down to 94% and remind the flight crew that they will be throttling down to 65% thrust in a few seconds. 35 seconds after liftoff. Smith begins to throttle down the engine some more. All data indicates that the shuttle's computer systems are making the proper adjustments to deal with the wind shear. 5 seconds later, Smith confirms that they have reached Mach 1. Scobie adds they're passing 19,000 feet in altitude. 45 seconds after liftoff. There's a bright flash slightly behind the space shuttle's right wing. Moments later, there's a second bright flash. 48 seconds after liftoff. A third flash appears downstream of Challenger's right wing. The crew can't see these ominous explosions, but a 70mm tracking camera captures them as it zooms in on the shuttle for a close-up view. Everyone who is viewing the footage is baffled at what they're witnessing. Suddenly, an orange ball of flames erupts from under the right wing. This fireball is coming from the right booster. The Challenger crew and Mission Control have no idea that anything is wrong, as the space shuttle's telemetry all reads nominal. The fireball from under the wing merges with the flames of the solid rocket boosters. 58 seconds after liftoff. Challenger accelerates past 1,539 miles per hour or 2,477 kilometers per hour. It has an altitude of 26,127 feet or 7,963.5 meters. Scobie gives the command to throttle the engines back as planned. Smith confirms the command. Mission Control confirms that the 3 engines of the space shuttle have all throttled down to 65% thrust. While this is happening, the tracking camera on the ground observes the first evidence that there is now something seriously wrong with the right solid rocket booster. An abnormal plume of smoke has begun pouring out of the rocket. The Challenger crew has no sensors in the cockpit that display the performance of the solid rocket boosters, and therefore are unaware that they are in serious danger. A second later, Challenger passes through the region of maximum aerodynamic pressure, which pushes against the space shuttle and its boosters with 720 pounds of pressure per square foot, or 7,750 pounds per square meter. The plume of smoke coming from the side of the booster intensifies. Inside the booster itself, an O-ring has disintegrated, the very same component that engineers at NASA were warning would fail if the space shuttle launches were not dialed back.
Apparently you can go from 0 to a complete site in just a single prompt with Wix Harmony. I don't know if this is going to be possible, or vibe coding meets drag and drop freedom. We'll see about that.
The O-ring on the booster was meant to seal the joints between separate parts of the rocket and prevent the leaking of fluids and gases from one chamber to another. With the O-ring destroyed, fuel is making its way through the booster and igniting due to the intense heat of the flames. A continuous inferno is expelled from the right booster along the side furthest away from the space shuttle. The windows in the cockpit give Scobie and Smith limited visibility, and they're not able to see the fire from the shuttle. 60 seconds after liftoff. "Feel that mother go!" Smith says over the intercom. Another member of the crew is heard yelling with joy in the background. At that moment, Mission Control receives data that indicates the internal pressure in the right side solid rocket booster has begun to drop. It's not known at the time, but this severe drop in pressure is the result of the hole created by the ignited fuel spewing out the side of the rocket where the O-ring has failed. The flames pouring out of the side of the rocket begin to lick the fitting attachments that couple the back end of the booster to the external fuel tank on the underside of the space
And this
shuttle.
is what happens
This
when
starts to
you don't
degrade the
listen
integrity of
to the
couplings.
people working
62
on
seconds
your
after liftoff,
on your
Challenger
vehicle.
shutters once again
This-
from high wind
this
speeds.
is
The shuttle rolls
disastrous.
slightly
This
to
is bad.
compensate as it passes 35,000 feet and approaches Mach 1.5. The wind is worse than predicted and stronger than any of the previous 24 shuttle missions. However, it's still within acceptable limits, even if it puts slightly more stress on the shuttle. 64 seconds after liftoff, the flame in the right side booster changes shape suddenly as the heat from the fire melts through metal plating, and liquid hydrogen begins to fuel the fire. The glow on the outside of the booster intensifies. As the force of the raging fire builds up, it begins to move the engine nozzle in large arcs. This momentum begins to shift the space shuttle's course, which the computer then adjusts for. The right booster's thrust levels are thrown off due to the leaking fuel and fire burning on the side. However, the nav system manages to compensate. Tremors vibrate through the cockpit as the hydrogen fuel is ignited, but get lost in the turbulence experienced due to the massive acceleration and wind shear. 66 seconds after liftoff. Throttle up, 3 at 104, Mission Control says over the comm. Houston and the Challenger flight crew are all still unaware of the fire coming out of the middle of the right booster, and other than a drop in pressure, there's no indication that there is a serious problem. The fire outside of the shuttle spread further. The flames creep toward the belly of the shuttle, where the external liquid hydrogen tank is located. The pressure inside the fuel tank suddenly begins to drop, indicating that an alarming amount of liquid hydrogen is leaking out. The fuel tank gauge plummets inside the cockpit, but Smith and Scobie don't notice it as they're focused on throttling up the engines and preparing to disengage the boosters. Even if either crew member was looking at the fuel gauge, the rapid dropping of pressure happened so quickly that there was nothing they could have done. The fuel tank can only be disengaged when all other engines are turned off, and the shuttle is in a benign aerodynamic environment higher up in the atmosphere. If they had disengaged the fuel tank to get away from the leak at this stage, the Challenger would have been forced into the fuel tank and the still burning solid rocket booster exhaust. 68 seconds after liftoff.
Yeah, that's
the
true.
fire spewing from the side of the rocket connects to the exhaust plume. The liquid oxygen propellant being fed into the main engines of the space shuttle falls drastically. Smith continues to throttle up the engines to reach 104% thrust. 72 seconds after liftoff. The back end of the right booster is ripped away from the external fuel tank. The strut that had been securing it has been compromised and failed. The back end of the right booster is now moving up and down relative to the space shuttle and fuel tank. Another explosion, likely from the stress and leaking fuel, occurs higher up on the booster near Challenger's cabin. The flame near the top of the booster grows rapidly, creating an enormous fireball. The nozzles of the engines on the back of the space shuttle begin moving at a rate of 5 feet per second in order to compensate for the unhinged booster. The top of the right booster is still connected to the fuel tank, but the loose back end causes a burst of lateral acceleration that jerks the shuttle. The main engine pressure decreases. Engine nozzle motion rates are off the chart. Things are very, very bad. Challenger sends its final navigation update. 73 seconds after liftoff. Uh-oh, Smith says. These will be the last words uttered over the comms by any of the Challenger crew. It's not clear what Smith is referring to, but it's likely that several sensors begin showing clear signs that something is wrong. The fuel tank and loose booster begin breaking apart. The shuttle jerks the opposite way it had moments before. The right booster is now producing 100,000 pounds of thrust less than the left booster. The unbalanced acceleration begins forcing the right booster up into the liquid oxygen section of the external fuel tank. Liquid hydrogen and oxygen begin leaking out of the external tank. A cloud of fuel accumulates outside. The right booster pushes further into the fuel tank and increases the amount of liquid oxygen being expelled. Milliseconds later, the inevitable happens. There's a bright flash of light located between the Challenger shuttle and the external fuel tank. The leaking fuel has been ignited. The fireball engulfs the space shuttle. There's a crackling sound over the intercom as ground transmitters search for a signal that is no longer there. Another explosion occurs near the front of the external fuel tank. This ignites the remainder of the fuel inside the front section of the tank, causing it to detonate. Challenger's engines redline and the computer initiates an emergency shutdown. Main engine 3 goes first, followed by number 1. The last telemetry signal from the space shuttle is sent while it is being torn apart. 74 seconds after liftoff, the radio signal from Challenger goes silent. Another explosion occurs near the space shuttle's nose. The cockpit with all 7 members of the crew is engulfed in flames as the rocket fuel in the forward reaction control system ignites. The debris of the destroyed shuttle continues traveling upward at Mach 1.92, or approximately twice the speed of sound. It reaches an altitude of 46,000 feet or 14,021 meters. Challenger's tail emerges from the fireball around the same moment that a wing can be seen. The fuselage and payload bay are torn apart.
I just built a budgeting app with Base 44.
Interesting. Can it generate reports?
It can now.
Apart by the rush of air forced in from the tail being ripped off, overpressurizing the payload bay and breaking it apart from the inside out. Wires and electrical cables flail behind the fuselage like tentacles. The satellites in the cargo bay are ejected into the air. The crew cabin arcs out of the flames and smoke. It seems to be intact, although there's a gaping hole where it used to be connected to the rest of the shuttle. Some of the crew may still be alive and awake, but when the Challenger is ripped apart, all of the air is sucked out of the cockpit, and a dramatic pressure drop results in everyone passing out. For this mission, the astronauts did not wear pressurized suits during liftoff. As they slump in their seats unconscious, oxygen deprivation settles in. Any crew member who is still alive will suffocate within the next few minutes.
Which, this was the dumbest idea that they didn't wear.
Some of the crew may still be alive and awake, but when the Challenger is ripped apart, all of the air is sucked out of the cockpit, and a dramatic pressure drop results in everyone passing.
So this could have been the deciding factor of them remaining alive and them dying. The fact that they didn't wear their suits, their pressurized suits, is beyond stupid. They should have been wearing their pressurized suits. Yes, it's uncomfortable. I'm sure of it, and it could have. And I mean, but the thing about it is it would have kept you breathing, you alive, until crash landing in the ocean. And I mean, again, this is just another thing that NASA has learned, that now when you're sitting in the shuttle, you're wearing your pressurized suit. This is another thing that NASA has learned.
Out. For this mission, the astronauts did not wear pressurized suits during liftoff. As they slump in their seats unconscious, oxygen deprivation settles in. Any crew member who is still alive will suffocate within the next few minutes. The 2 solid rocket boosters continue to fly upward at different angles, now free from the struts that connected them to the external fuel tank. 1 second after the Challenger space shuttle explodes. Mission Control does not yet know that the Challenger space shuttle has exploded. 1 minute 15 seconds, velocity 2,900 feet per second, altitude 9 nautical miles, downrange distance 7 nautical miles, says Stephen Nesbitt, the public affairs officer at Mission Control. 2 seconds after the Challenger space shuttle explodes. A parachute emerges from the carnage, giving people hope. But as the tracking camera focuses, it turns out to be the nose cap of the right solid rocket booster. Smoke and flaming debris arc outward from the blast. The rocket boosters continue to fly upward, leaving a corkscrew trail of smoke behind them. 15 seconds after the Challenger space shuttle explodes. Flight GC, we've had negative contact, loss of downlink, says the ground control engineer N.R. Talbot. It's at this point that Mission Control is aware something tragic has happened and is trying to figure out exactly what happened. They're informed that the Challenger space shuttle has been lost. 36 seconds after the Challenger space shuttle explodes, a self-destruct signal is sent to the rogue solid rocket boosters, triggering an emergency detonation. Both rockets explode in a plume of black smoke. Debris falls back toward the Earth. Without the weight of the space shuttle and the fuel tank, there was no telling how far the rockets would have gone before burning the last of their fuel. They needed to be detonated to eliminate the risk of them crashing back to Earth in a populated area rather than the desolate waters of the Atlantic Ocean. 1 minute and 31 seconds after the Challenger space shuttle explodes. Multiple sources have now confirmed that the Challenger STS-51L has been lost. Rescue efforts are launched. 2 minutes and 11 seconds after the Challenger space shuttle explodes. The TV tracking camera spots the first pieces of the space shuttle crashing into the ocean. 33 seconds later, the crew cabin slams into the waves of the Atlantic at approximately 200 miles per hour or 322 kilometers per hour, at a braking force 200 times that of normal gravity. The crew cabin disintegrates on impact and sinks 100 feet to the bottom of the ocean. For the next few minutes, debris continues to splash down into the ocean east of Patrick Air Force Base. A cloud of brown smoke lingers over the surface of the water as a result of the hydrazine rocket fuel that covered the wreckage as it entered the ocean. Mission Control pinpoints the crash site as being approximately 28.64 degrees north at 80.28 degrees west, 5 minutes after the Challenger space shuttle explodes. The broadcast on NASA television has been eerily quiet as everyone tries to take in what just happened. The camera view switches from the ocean back to the grandstand at the press site. Observers stand with their backs to the camera, looking up at the sky where a white cloud of smoke still lingers. White wisps of haze extend from the explosion site, like weeping willow vines indicating where burning debris fell from the sky. 8 minutes and 5 seconds after the Challenger space shuttle explodes. This is Mission Control, Houston. We are coordinating with recovery forces in the field. Range safety equipment, recovery vehicles intended for the recovery of the SRBs in the general area, says Stephen Nesbitt in a somber voice. The only thing left to do is go through the data, recover as much of the space shuttle as possible, and determine what caused the horrific accident that led to the loss of 7 people aboard the Challenger space shuttle.
That
March
could have been
7th,
avoided if they
1986,
would have
1
listened
month
to
and
the
10
mechanics.
days after the Challenger space shuttle disaster. The USS Preserver bobs up and down in the dark waters of the Atlantic Ocean. A dive team has just been deployed to scout the hypothesized location of the Challenger cabin. The divers locate the wreckage that was in the front of the space shuttle and confirm that the bodies of the crew are still inside. The aftermath of the Challenger space shuttle disaster. All space shuttles are immediately grounded, and any upcoming launches are canceled, pending a full investigation of what happened to the Challenger. NASA and a group of men appointed by President Ronald Reagan, known as the Rogers Commission, began looking into the chain of events that led to the loss of the space shuttle and its crew. It's concluded that the space shuttles are being pushed too hard, and the concerns of engineers working on the crafts are being ignored or overlooked. What it came down to was that NASA had been trying to accomplish too much with too little funding. The investigation also determines that the 2 rubber O-rings which led to the fuel leak in the right booster and eventual catastrophic explosion of the external fuel tank were compromised by the severe cold from the night before the launch. Unfortunately, even if the crew had been aware of the problem at liftoff, there would have been no way for them to avoid the disastrous consequences. The space shuttle wouldn't have been able to survive a high-speed separation, even if it was attempted before the external fuel tank exploded. On June 6, the report is given to the President, who determines Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama, Morton Thiokol Inc., and NASA as a whole are responsible for the Challenger disaster. Marshall Space Flight Center constructed the shuttle boosters, engines, and tank, while Morton Thiokol manufactured and built the booster motor.
But I mean, NASA in general is also is in pretty bigger shit over these guys, mainly because NASA was in charge, like, an overhaul of the shuttle itself. So the flight center, Marshall Space Flight Center, yeah, they're in trouble, but they're following orders. Martin Thiokol Inc. Made the auxiliary boosters. They're in trouble. Yes, they didn't. None of these fuckers listened to the mechanics that were trying to tell them, "Hey, how about we not, so we can fix the issue that's at hand, or you're gonna like sentence a bunch of people to death." No one listened. Not a single soul listened to the people that knew better and was trying to warn them of the dangers that are ahead of what the fuck was going to happen. And look what happened.
It's also uncovered during the investigation from several engineers who testify that they expressed concerns specifically about the O-rings and their seals to their supervisors for at least 2 years prior to the loss of the Challenger. The Rogers Commission recommends that communication between engineers and NASA management be tightened, quality control procedures be improved, and several more checkpoints be added to the Shuttle Safety Advisory Panel. On September 29, 1988, the Space Shuttle Discovery launches with 5 veteran astronauts on board. This is the first mission since the Challenger disaster. The Space Shuttle program lasts for 23 more years. On July 8, 2011, Atlantis launches from Cape Canaveral. It will be the 135th Space Shuttle mission. Atlantis lands on July 21, 2011, marking the official end of the Space Shuttle era. 2 space shuttles were lost during the 30 years that they were in use. On February 1, 2003, Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated as it re-entered the atmosphere. And on January 28, 1986, Challenger exploded due to a faulty O-ring. Both crafts had a crew of 7, all of which were lost, and all of which were heroes. Now watch Atomic Bombing of Hiroshima.
I mean, I'm just beyond in awe about the whole thing and how incredibly sad it is that shit like that happened. So, I mean, like I said, again, YouTube, this is educational purposes, so please don't flag me. And I am still incredibly sad and sorry about the victims of the 7 astronauts that died. 14 in total due to negligence during the shuttle program. So to those 14 families, I'm sorry for your loss. Things could have been absolutely avoided if, you know, proper steps were taken, and they just were ignored, and I don't understand why. But just wanted to highlight something, you know, that they've learned. One of the things that they learned during, you know, the space flights is this. You know what I mean? To avoid something like this, to take extra precautionary steps. And me, along with all the rest of America and everyone else in the world that holds their breath, you know what I mean? Like, we hope these people just come back alive. We really hope they come back alive. It's a scary thing. Space is unknown, cruel, and deadly, and the steps you got to take, not only going into space but coming back from space, is scary. It is life-threatening, it is scary, it is cruel, and it does not care. So ladies and gentlemen, aboard the Artemis II Orion, we salute the living fuck out of you, and we only wish for your safe return. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you